Hello, everybody.
Hey, Jordy.
Hey, Ian, welcome everybody. If everyone can make sure their cameras are off and their sound is off, that would be great. And we're gonna kick into this in a minute or so. Michaela, well, let's might as well get going. Why don't we pull up the first test question? So the way we're going to run this is our annual survey. We've done this for the past 4 or 5 years, and wanted to thank everyone who's here because you're giving back to your colleagues by participating in this. We think we give a lot to the profession, and we always like when other people do too. And this is what we appreciate by doing this. You're sharing information with your colleagues. So if everybody can vote, that's the idea. If you're here, we want you to vote. So please make sure you register and you vote, and we'll test that this is making sure that everything's working. And we're going to switch it up. And that's great. So welcome for those who are just joining. I see a bunch of people are coming on. So Ian, are you ready?
Ready to roll. My favorite time of the
Let's
year. Ready to roll.
let's go. Um, that's good. So please, everybody, do participate. It's not fair to just sit there and watch. You got to participate and give back. So thanks, everybody. So let's go to the next one. So the first one's about the size of your firm, and so we get a sense of who's out there that we're going to be getting information from, and that'll help us maybe understand the answers a little bit better. Um, Certainly, I have a unique practice. I'm both counsel at Hull and Hull and have my own practice, so I'm going to participate here as well. I'm gonna, if no people aren't sure how to do it, you can easily find that out. And here we go. So about half are sole practitioners, and that makes sense. And the rest of us are small firms. All right, next one. Michaela is running everything here. So, Michaela. All right. Thank you. All right. Here's the next one. Where do you practice? So again, we're trying to get a sense of our participants, and we're closing in on, well, we're over 100 now, which is great. So please participate. And
I like the illustration of Bowmanville. That's a good choice.
yes, Michaela was in charge of that, I believe.
I believe it was a good choice, though.
All right, there we go. All right, so that gives you a sense, everybody, of where we're at. So let's go to the next one, and we can. Great. And can everybody see the results when they're published? I'm just hoping, Michaela, I hope that's working. Um, so now, where do we get our clients from? Um, what do you, Ian, any thoughts about this?
Well, this is such a good mix of choices here, and really, it's one of those almost all of above at some level. But I hope people just sort of focus on what is sort of your main source, or you perceive to be your main source.
All right, another 10 seconds. All right, let's see it. There we go. So again, we're getting so many. You know what this says is um, more than half our clients come from our clients, and so it means that we have to do as good a job with our clients. The better job we do with our clients, the more work we're gonna get. So that we've neglected, I think, client experience to some degree as a profession. But vast majority, 80% of our stuff, our work comes from our existing clients or clients based on those existing clients. Makes that so much more important. Let's go to the next one. So let's see the experience out there. I bet we have a fair number of younger lawyers. So we're gonna I'm in the 20 plus group here, Ian.
Yeah, I'm glad you just stopped at 20. I'm a little
Ah,
nervous.
Thank goodness.
I'm an old man.
You're young looking though. That's the key. Young at heart too. All right. Well, look at that. 50% have been practicing over 20 years. So let's move on. Here we go. Now, we're getting into the practice area. Do we collect our information? So important, Ian, the collection of information. And let's find out, how people are doing that. We can, that's where, and we've talked many times about this, is collecting the information is, one of the best ways to avoid errors in this. And let's see, we're at 84. Some people haven't voted. So everybody's on here has got to vote. We got 110 people. Everybody's got to participate. So,
So
still,
it's interesting,
yeah,
the high numbers on the digital. That's great, and that's a good sign of the nature of the practice moving. Certainly 5 years ago that would have been, 11%.
yeah.
So,
And
but
that's what we've seen. One of the trends is we are going to a digital. So that's great. Reminder, now we're at 112. We should be seeing a lot, but over 100 results here. So now here's a big problem is even if we use a questionnaire, are people doing it right? And, for
well,
me,
that's yeah, go.
yeah, what do you know? Go ahead, Ian.
No, I just think that's exactly they are 90% of the time they're not, and so um, what what we continue to enhance and through eState as well is that make the questionnaire easier, but make it focused on the type of clients that you're seeking, and make it the easier you make it, the better you're going to get the information. You're never going to fix the fact that clients hate doing these.
Yeah. And you can see there's a big percentage of people who aren't doing a great job at it. But, we've talked a lot about questionnaires and making them easier to use and tailoring them to your clients, really important stuff. All right, here we go. And now when we send out questionnaires or we're collecting information through questionnaires, are we getting just information about the family and the client? Or are we collecting asset information? Or are we also asking questions about their intentions for their will, their executors, their beneficiaries, what they want to do? Let's see where we're at on that. That is, to me, something interesting. I fall into the group in the middle. I don't typically ask about planning in advance of the meeting, but that's something we certainly saw a lot more of. And one of the reasons we built our questionnaire to be able to put in any question that you might want. Now you can do that. And so the benefit of that, of course, is you got a heads up as to what the client is thinking. And vast majority, over 75% are getting those instructions in advance as well. So that's great. All right. Now, for me, most of my clients are your typical situation, right? Everything to the spouse, then to the kids, blah, blah, blah. Interested to see what percentage of our participants here are those typical kinds of cases. For
And
me, I'd probably be
oh,
over
sorry.
75. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, no, and I would too. The interesting thing though to me is to be efficient, we have to be ready for the 25,
Yeah,
right? And that's the whole key to me. Like I don't think and we'll see what the numbers are here, but I don't think it makes sense. Yeah, look, we've got a good percentage of them that are that range. It makes good sense to be ready for that, bring efficiencies to those 50 to 75% of the wills, and then be ready for the complex ones.
yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so you've got a blended family. Are you going to, act for both? Do you usually act for both, or do you rarely act for both, or you never act for both? I know where I fit in, and I'm going to be in the minority, I know for sure. Um, we've talked a lot about joint retainers and the issues with acting for both clients in this situation. Um, and it seems certainly that most of our participants do act for both. And there are reasons not to, of course, which are the conflicts that arise after the fact. Probably what would you say? Would you say that blended families account for a majority of estate disputes? I don't know if the number is that high, but it certainly they can cause a lot of problems, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's well into 40% range in my practice. We've been tracking that.
And yet, listen, there's good reason to act for both. And it's clear, 2/3 of your colleagues do. So that's good to know. All right. So now, are people using virtual meetings? Are we using Zoom to meet with clients? Are we still meeting in person a lot? For me, believe it or not, I'm on the top range. I'm doing a lot of my meetings virtually. This is the initial meeting, not the signing meetings. Um, are we doing these in person, and how has that changed? Um, it hasn't changed that much. Still, uh, most people are doing most of their initial meetings in person, and but you can see it's distributed. So it does show that that 80 plus have some virtual meetings with clients, and so that's the nature of our practice. Some virtual, some in person. Great. Let's move on. This is interesting. Our initial planning meeting. How long does your meeting last typically? Not, of course, not everyone, but generally, how long is your typical meeting? Um, and I know where I'd fit in there. Ian, what would you put in there?
Well, you know what, I budget an hour, but I try to keep it within 45 minutes. People just lose attention span, and if you haven't simplified things enough within a 45 minutes to 55 minutes, then I'll book another one.
Yeah. So I mean, I book an hour, and they almost always take an hour. And if it's going to wrap up in a few minutes after, that's no problem. But sometimes, at an hour, we're still not, there. And so yeah, I typically do try to keep it to an hour as well. But yeah, and it seems like most people are in that range. So that's a good sense for that initial planning meeting. Um, Retainers, written retainer agreements. We've talked before about that and how important that is from Law Pro's point of view. If there's ever a dispute, it also confirms things like what kind of advice you're not giving, like tax advice perhaps, or foreign advice. Um, and of course sets out the way of billing and things like that. So let's just see what our numbers are here. So yeah,
Yeah, but this is, I just think if there's anything, only just on the litigation side, bring that number up. It's an easy thing to prepare, and it is such a turning point when you're defending a lawyer when there's a retainer agreement.
yeah. And it's easy if you use eState, it's one button, done. So great. Let's go to the next one. Deposits. This was something I didn't do early in my career. I have done it consistently probably for the last 20 years. I love knowing that I have money there to get, before, so I don't have those stacks of, unsigned wills, and I'm not getting paid on them yet. So, and I've never had anybody object to it. Certainly not after they've met and they want to go ahead. Um, it's still, most people are not. Um, so that's interesting. Think about it. I mean, it's worked well for me, and it feels good to have money there, because sometimes these things drag on and on and on. And one thing you can do is say in your retainer, when I deliver a draft, I get paid 3/4 of my fee, and get your money, and it improves cash flow, and no client that I've ever had has objected. So, and I do it every time. Um, how do we talk to our clients? Our first question was, or one of the early questions was, where do we get our clients from? We get them from our existing clients. Um, this is where I think I would love to see a change. Um, lawyers love their words, and we do a lot of our, we think we're great at explaining things, and we are, but there are other ways to do it, and that is what's going to separate lawyers going forward in this business, I think, is the client experience, and that's a very interesting number. I really think we can improve there. Visualization, whether it's a whiteboard or other or software or whatever it might be, consider doing that, incorporating it. Clients eat it up, they love it, and they'll tell their friends about it. So that's one I'm disappointed with. So taking notes, how do we document these meetings? We know, Ian, what do you say about note taking?
Yeah, well, you know what? We've just enhanced our note taking beyond because we do a lot of this, our intake and our meetings on Zoom. So Zoom has a great tool, but I've added actually, it's a little more expensive, but it's really helped is Otter AI. And we have comprehensive note taking summaries and all sorts of usage of the document itself once you get it. So I'm an automatic note taking for both my contentious and non-contentious matters now.
Great. So we're still taking things using handwritten notes, paper and pen for the majority of us, or taking notes on computers. I video record and all of my meetings, and I take my instructions directly into the software that will generate the documents and come up with the plan, and that really is a great time saver. But very, very interesting. How many meetings are we having for your typical will? Uh, Now, of course, some require more, but this is your typical one.
Yeah, I'm certainly at 3 myself, but
Okay.
interested to see what the numbers are.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm at 3 too. So we're in the minority there. So most people are doing it too. They're planning meeting and then a signing meeting where they review it as well. Great. Let's move to the next one.
Well, that's good efficiencies. I want to try
Yeah.
to get mine to 2. That's my goal. So,
And how many hours are we spending on a file? Your typical will planning file. Um, again, everything to the spouse, then to the kids, that kind of stuff, executing. Um, and this will go into sort of when we talk about the fees. So, um, yeah, well, let's keep going here. And well, most 3 to 5 hours, which I think makes some sense for sure. Great. Next one. Um, Now, how are you drafting your documents? Are you using software or are you just cutting and pasting from a word processor? Um, I think we're going to see that change as time goes on. And It's good to see that hopefully, just a plug, hopefully you guys are using eState. And so that's great. Let's move to the next one. Now, how do we find out about updating precedents? Are we going to conferences and that's how we know to update them? Are we getting them from textbooks? Are we discussing things with colleagues automatically? Or is there another way that we're making sure that our precedents are up to date? Um, so that's good to know, and good for the Law Society to know, and the OBA and other providers that conferences are having an impact, and that's great. So good, excellent. Let's see what the next one is. So what's our timeline between getting instructions and getting a draft out? There's case law that talks about, what happens if the client dies between those two situations, or they become incapable or something like that. So, how efficient are we in getting from the instruction stage to the drafting stage? And This is giving us some insight into that kind of information. And most of us are doing it, within 14 days. So that's good. That might be faster than you are, but there are ways, obviously, to do it. But that's a good number, I think. Um, do we have files sitting there? And Ian, if you're around to comment on this, is this something that we have to worry about, where we've got, a whole bunch of files that we haven't gotten to? I mean, obviously, from a law pro question, if somebody dies, we've got, issues there. So we want to keep that, and as well as the stress of looking behind you and seeing all those documents, wills waiting to be drafted. But what's nice is that people are generally keeping up to speed, which is wonderful. Let's go to the next one. Do we send drafts out to clients for review? I always do. Some people don't like to do that because it can confuse clients, but if you have a guide attached to it, or you warn clients, we're going to review it in more detail. This wasn't as common, I think, but now almost you can see almost all of us are doing that. So that's great. All right, good to know. How often are we using multiple wills? I know Ian's spoken about multiple wills before, and how there are many reasons for using multiple wills almost as a matter of course. And certainly the percentage for me has gone up as we can use it for, personal effects and just avoiding, state administration tax on certain things. But yeah, it's still a pretty small percentage. One thing I'd say here is, there's a way where you can do a good service for your client by providing them with probate planning and make a little bit more money on the side. So let's go to the next one, because we're going to ask about charging for those in a second. Do you review at a separate meeting, or do you do it at the signing meeting? And this ties in with the number of meetings that people are having, for example. So you can see it's pretty evenly split. I never like to get into the signing meeting and then have to make changes. So that's why I always like to, wow, 50-50. Look at that. Interesting. All right. Next. So are you typically billing flat fees or hourly? I almost all of mine are flat fees. So now we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty about billing. So we can see that most people, again, I'd love to see everybody participating in this. We have 121 people on here. I'd like everybody to participate. This is where we can really help each other. So most of us doing flat fees. Great. All right. Now, fees. Here's the good one. Okay. So we're talking about your typical two wills, like two single wills for a couple, two powers of attorney for property, two personal care. What are people charging for that package in your typical case, right? And we're going to see a big range. We're going to see a range based, on things like where you're practicing, what kind of clients you're seeing, how much time you're spending, things like that. So let's let everybody kind of jump in here, and let's see if we can get our numbers up a little bit. If you haven't voted, you got to vote, please, please. Okay, so stop there for just a second, because what we show there is, most are under $2,000 for that couple. 95% are under that. You've got 25% that are under $1,000. So that's giving you a bit of a sense of what other people are charging for this package. So let's move to the next one. That's an important one. Now, as I said before, if you're not drafting multiple wills that often for your clients, how much are people charging for the same plan, but using multiple wills versus single wills? For me, I charge $1,000 more for the multiple wills than the single wills, because we're adding value. It's not necessarily purely on the amount of time. If you use eState, you'll know how much extra time it takes you to draft multiple wills versus single wills. 0. But it takes more time to explain it and all of those other things. I charge $1,000. I've never had a client have a problem with that based on what I charge for other things. They want to save the probate tax. It's a good idea. You can see that almost all of us are charging something more, and that, I think, makes sense. But there's a place where you can get some revenue as well. And you're doing a great service that online wills can't do. Now, what about storage? And if you do store, and here you might not, if you don't store, you might not have an answer here, but if you do store, most of us are not charging anything to store wills. It looks like the vast majority of us. So that's another, again, it is an obligation on you. But that's how we're doing it. It's good to know. Let's go to the next one. And do you use reporting letters? I'm sure if Ian was right here, he'd tell you, send a reporting letter. Really helpful if there's ever a problem. Again, if you're using software, you can have a reporting letter done in a minute or less, and really great to help protect you. So good to know. How many of us are holding original documents for clients? If you don't hold any, you'd be putting 0 down there, and then you can indicate. And this is pretty, I think, typical, is that you either hold them, you never hold them, or you always hold them. That's more, I think this number is shrinking over the past years of people who are holding originals. If you are holding originals, important that people can find them, and we'll talk about that at the next one. So that's great. When you're drafting POAs, are you doing one copy and giving that to the client? Are you doing more than one copy? Let's see what we got there. I used to do multiple copies. Now I do just one, just to make it easier. And we have about 5 questions left. So let's see if we can get through them all. It's basically spread pretty even. Do you make notarial copies of your documents at the time of signing? Sometimes that can be useful if the original can't be found, certainly of the powers of attorney. Let's get those results. When you hit 90, we can turn that one down. So that's 2/3, 1/3 or so. Great. Let's go to the next one. For those who are holding original wills, or even if you're not holding original wills, somebody's looking for a lawyer who's done the will. Don't forget, now with substantial compliance, people might be looking for our file even if we haven't finished a will for somebody. Okay, what I see here is very interesting. 75% of us or 70 to 75% are purely reading the ORs or waiting to be contacted. We're going to be having a session May 29th with the Law Society, with Law Pro, to talk about will storage and finding wills and our obligations to be available to be located. So we'll talk about that. This historically was the only way to find a missing will. That shows you, this isn't surprising to me, that, are you checking the ORs to see if someone's looking for a will that you drafted? 50% of us never check the ORs, and only 30% or 22% always do. So, that's interesting. The last couple of questions are about the future. Do you use ChatGPT or other AI in your practice? If we had asked this questions 2 years ago, it would have been 0. Never. Everyone would have said never. I'm starting to use AI. First of all, we're using it more in eState, and also just to help us in certain things. The future. If you believe in AI, how do you think it might impact us? I'm not a believer that it's going to draft documents that well for us consistently. You might get different results every time you do it, so it's a bit of a concern, but it can certainly help us with gathering information, and identifying errors is a big one. Providing legal advice. It's going to be interesting how limited AI can, or focused AI can help us on that. So great. That's very helpful. That's good. How many left do we have here, Michaela? 2 left. So if everybody can stick around, what is going to be the most likely significant change in our practice area? Where do you see the future of estate practice being changed? So we'll just let this play out because this is an important one for us, all of us, really, because our practice is changing. There's no question it's going to change dramatically in the next 5 years. So this is, where do we think it's going to change? Collecting information and drafting documents are the big ones. So is this the last one? All right, here we go. Last one. And this is, I'm sending this straight to Doug Downey. So let's fill this in. What do you want to see? If we can only make one change, the next change, what do you want to see? Which is be great to get. Let's let this one run out because I'd like everybody to vote, whether you have thought much about this or not. For me, I would love to see that presumption of revocation out the window so that lost wills are not always a problem. But will registry, well, I'm going to tell you, you'll find out on May the 29th, but there's a new will registry for Ontario wills only coming. It's called onwills.ca, like onland.ca, but it's onwills.ca. So that's coming. I want to thank everybody who participated. That was a wonderful contribution. Thank you to everyone. You've really helped your colleagues with this. We'll publish this information for you. We'll send it around. You'll get it, and we'll see where we land throughout this year, and see maybe we can convince the government to help us through some of these changes. Thank you so much for being here. Next week, no webinar. We're off for Victoria Day. The week after, we have 2 coming up this month. We have one on reviewing wills with clients, the process for doing that, and some documents that you can use to help you with that with your client. And then on the 29th, our very special webinar on storage and locating wills with Law Pro Ray Leclerc, Kelly Guerra from the Law Society, and Custodius, a software service that or a company that holds original wills. So happy to have you all here. Have a great week off, and we thank you so much, and we will definitely share the survey results with you. Take care, everybody. Thanks.